On guys, so today working on celica again. We're gonna be doing a bunch of maintenance that's been like super overdue. So I've got everything I'm gonna need today. So what we're doing is an oil change and transmission oil change and spark plugs if we have time. Um, when I bought this car, the last owner said he had just done an oil change and then I guess sold it to me. So when I bought it, I didn't do an oil change, but it's been about a year, and I should have done this probably a long time ago, but I've been putting it off. Um, I think you're supposed to do your oil changes like every 7,000 kilometers roughly, and I've put over 10. It's not terrible, but it's definitely something you don't want to do like consistently. So from now on, I'm gonna try doing this every 7,000 kilometers, I think. So yeah, this is what we're rocking with. I've got my drain pan right here. I've got an empty bottle in case this gets too full, and then I can pour it into here. This is new oil, unopened. We're using 5W30. I think this is regular, not synthetic. We also have some Lucas gear oil. It's 75W90. I tried doing a lot of research on what type of gear oil to use, and a lot of people were saying to use Redline online, but none of my stores nearby have it, and Lucas is pretty good. I read the good things about it, so hoping this is going to feel better. It shifts good right now. It actually shifts great. This is, out of the 3 manual cars I've driven, this one shifts the best. It's very notchy, but sometimes when I shift gears, it sometimes gets stuck, like it doesn't want to go into gear. Happens very rarely, but I'm hoping that this will make it feel even smoother, even notchier maybe. What else we have? We've got a funnel, got a new oil filter, and I bought a new an oil drain bolt with a washer. I just wanted to buy a washer, but they told me that it came with the bolt and it was only $3, so I was like, sure, why not? This is really interesting. It's like a nylon washer, and I've never seen these before. I've only ever seen like aluminum washers, and I know that people use aluminum or copper, but I've never seen this. I did some looking online, and apparently this is a pretty common option as well. So that's what we're going to use. And then we have some NGK spark plugs. So this is for the engine oil, and so is that. And for the transmission, we're just changing the fluid. There is no filter, I'm pretty sure, in the manuals. And I don't think there's washers on the bolts as well. I have no idea. There's only a couple videos online showing like the GT oil changes for the trans. So I'm going to try to make that part more detailed, but changing the engine oil, that's super simple. First we got to get the car in the air, so got the car in the air now. And I was just underneath for a bit, and it looks like I'm leaking oil from somewhere. Because there's oil on the plastic tray underneath. And I checked my oil, but it's full. So it must be like a really slow leak. I'm aware of one leak on this engine, and I'm pretty sure it's somewhere back here. There's a gasket on the back, which is a really common spot to leak from. I can't show it very well on the camera, but there's something not too far down, but just around here on the block. And yeah, I can see it's saturated, so that's probably it. That's probably where it's leaking from, but I'm also gonna try taking off this under panel here. There's supposed to be one on this side too, which you have to remove to get to the oil pan. But mine's missing it, so that's just a little less work. But yeah, look right here. It's shiny right here, which is weird. And I touched it and it's slippery, and I'm like, yeah, it's probably oil. Like, could that really be from that one spot? I'm not sure. I'm gonna try and take this off. This just turned into a whole lot more work. So I moved the plastic thing out of the way, and it looks like my engine is leaking oil from around the edges. All the way around, only half of the gasket, I guess, is leaking, and this side's dry. So looks like I'm gonna need a new oil pan gasket. And I checked the top, and it's leaking oil. It's hard to show it, but it's leaking from the top, and I am confident that it's the timing chain tensioner that's gone bad. That's a really common spot for onesies to leak from, and that's exactly where it's like very saturated. So that's what I need for fixing the engine leak. But also on this pan I said it was oily, and so underneath, see, that's the trans right here, and it's very oily as well. This cross member is in the way, so it's hard to tell, but like, yeah, there we go. Trans is super oily, and it looks like it's from the axle seals. So I'm gonna need a new one of those. So there's no point in changing the oil now, since taking that stuff out is gonna require all the oil to come out as well. But changing that seal, I think that's a little bit out of my skill range. So, and I know working on your own car is like cool and shit, but you gotta know where your limits are at. I'm pretty sure I could fix the engine leak, like doing the oil pan gasket and the tensioner. What is it called? The timing chain tensioner. I can probably do that on my own, but that seal for the axle, that's tricky, because I would need to remove the axle out and then take the seal out, which I guess sounds simple, but like, it's not for me at least. And as well as this car is pretty rusty, so that would be really tricky. So I called my mechanic up, who I'm close with, and he said they're too busy to do anything this week. So I don't know. He said he wants to look at it first before he can say anything about how expensive it's going to be to change. I kind of want to try doing it at home, but I don't know. It's a little intimidating, a little bit too much. So for now, I'm gonna go, I guess, take a look at where I can get parts from. Usually there's one shop I go to, one parts store that I go to. It's a really small parts store. But for stuff like this, I want to try getting some OEM stuff, like from Toyota, but I've never been able to figure out where people buy stuff like that around where I live. I know you can order online, but I want to go to like a physical store. So I guess the celica's out of commission for a while, because I don't know how much oil's in the trans, and I don't want to push it. And yeah, the engine oil on the engine is super old, and I just don't want to drive this car. And luckily, Lexus is on the road. Can't remember if I wrapped up that video or not, but Lexus is on the road, so we can take, that's going to be the daily. This is why you need a daily for your daily, because when your daily's down, you need the other daily. So now I got my daily for the daily. I'm going to daily that. This would be really bad if I just had this car and I couldn't like fix this. Well, I can't fix this right now, but luckily I don't really go anywhere right now. It's summer, I got nothing going on. it's a few days later. After thinking about what to do for a long time, I decided I'm just gonna try fixing this stuff myself. The leaks, that is. So I figured out so far that there's 3 leaks. 2 from the engine, I'm pretty sure, and then 1 from the trans. For the trans, we saw it was like where the axle is meeting the trans. And I bought a new seal, which is this one. This is for the passenger side. And for the engine, I bought this. This is a timing chain tensioner. This is a super common area for these onesies used to leak oil from. Basically, the O-ring on these things go bad over time, and that's why they leak. And it's better just to replace this whole thing instead of just the O-ring. Here's the part number for this. There you go. These are OEM, straight from Toyota. And the tensioner sits on the back of the engine near the front. If I get a flashlight, maybe you can see it. There, that bolt. There's 1 bolt below it as well. There's 2 bolts in total. And you can see that's where I'm leaking a ton of oil from. Yeah, you got the idea. But we're gonna try fixing it first. This is the part. I'm not gonna make it like super detailed on like how to swap this part. So if you are doing this yourself, there are a ton of like really good videos online on how to do it. That's how I'm able to do it, because I'm watching these vids. But basically, there's two 10 mils. Take that piece out, slap this one in basically, and then you have to rotate the engine a little bit because this thing is like pressed together, and when you rotate the engine in a certain way, it expands and then puts tension back onto the chain. And you don't want to start the engine until you do that last step, which is really important. So you got to be able to reach the that main pulley at the bottom so you can rotate the engine. You need a 19 and a ratchet. And I see some people do it straight from here, but like I have this, like I can take this cover off, but like I've got AC lines, and the videos I saw where they were doing it from here, they didn't have the AC lines in the way. So I saw you can also do it from here. If you take the wheel off, you should be able to access that bearing from here. So I'm gonna first raise the car, make sure I can reach that, because I don't want to start this process until I know that I can actually complete it. Off. There's just one panel right here that's got a couple 10 mils, it looks like, and then we should be able to see the front side of the engine. So let me just take that off real quick. So I've taken off the panel, came off really easily, which is pretty lucky since all of these bolts are rusty. And you can see this is the main bearing. Okay, I know there's a different name for this, but I can't remember what it is right now. But this is the pulley that we want to turn the engine. So I've got a 19, it's an extended one. You don't need an extended one, but because this is extended, it wouldn't have worked through the top of the engine. It just would have been too difficult. This, with an extension, gives me a lot of room, fits on there, and I have a lot of range of motion to turn this. So yeah, this is gonna work. You can also see that side of the engine is just covered in dirt and greasy stuff. See how it's all dark, and this side of the engine is much lighter. See, that side's glossy, this side's clean. So yeah, and oil's coming down from there. And we're gonna deal with the pan later once we're done this, because the pan is also leaking oil around the seal. I thought it was just leaking from the tensioner since it was dripping down. But that side of the pan is relatively dry, and then this side is very wet around the seam. We'll deal with that later. So I've gotten the tensioner loose, and I'm just gonna try tapping it a little bit with a screwdriver. This is a big flat screwdriver. To try not to scrape the engine like the block. It's really tight in the back here. I can barely get my hands in there. There's no way I can get the camera back, but like, yeah, you know how it is. So this part of the engine bay was really tight. There wasn't space to really show what I was doing. There wasn't really space to even get my socket onto the bolts, so I struggled with that for a long time. And even when I got it loose, the tensioner seemed to be stuck to the block. So after tapping it a bit with the flathead, it eventually got loose and I could get my hand in there and pull it out. Okay, well, here it is. So here's a closer look. Here's the old piece, here's the new piece. Not much to say. They look like the same piece, which is good. You always want to compare, make sure that they're the same. And yeah, they look the same. This one's got the thingy pushed in, and you see it's hooked right there. So later when we put this in the engine, we have to turn the engine a little bit, and that makes that hook unhook, and then it should spring out like that. But when you're installing it, you want it to be hooked like this. Nice fresh piece. You can see kind of like the line where it was against the timing chain. So yeah, let's just slap this in. The reason these leak is because the small O-ring on them gets kind of hard over time. It doesn't seal as well. You could replace just the ring, but it's better to replace the whole tensioner since you're in there. So we've hand tightened it down. We've tightened it enough so that like the bolts are flush, basically. So now we're going to actually tighten it with this breaker bar. And we need to set it to 80 inch-pounds. Finished putting in the tensioner, and I did that thing where I turned the engine and I started the engine and it's fine. So moving on, I think my oil pan is leaking. This side is pretty dry. It looks a little damp right there. The rest on this side is dry. And also the side is very wet. This is the side that has the tensioner, so it may have dripped down from there. But the tensioner is like around here, so I'd expect this side to be wet. But it's also wet along the middle towards the back. And then also that seal is leaking where the transmission is. So we'll deal with that later, but we're gonna drain the oil and then drop the pan and then reseal it. if you look underneath, I put in a new oil filter and a new drain bolt and a new washer. And it's torqued down to factory spec. And I was going to take off the oil pan because I thought it was leaking. But the more I think about it, it's probably not. Because only, see, this side is dry. It's only wet because oil from this filter came down. But it was dry here, and the back side's only wet because that's the side that had the tensioner that we changed already. And, you know, every time I've checked, the fluids for the oil, it's always been full. It's never moved. I check every couple weeks, and for months it's like not moved at all. So if it is leaking, if the oil pan's leaking, it's probably extremely slow, and I don't think it's going to be a big issue. So I'm just going to fill up the engine with oil, and I think that's going to be it for today. We still got to deal with the transmission that's leaking. After filling the oil, I tried to remove the axle myself so that I could replace that transmission seal, but I was met with a ton of difficulty. It's been a couple hours. I've just kind of been sitting and contemplating, and I've kind of like hit a wall basically. So we unbolted everything that we needed to unbolt to take out the axle. Took out the axle nut, the 14s that were kind of in the middle of the axle under the car. I took out the bolts for the strut so that we can move the whole hub forward and be able to push the axle back in. But the problem is the axle is seized into that hub, and on the bottom, the bracket that the 14s are on, that bracket right here, this bracket, yeah, it's also rust welded to that. I think it's very stuck. So, you know, I could get a puller to take it out of the hub, but like I don't know how to unstick it from that. I've been hitting it with a hammer and like a pry bar to try and rotate it maybe, or just get it kind of loose, but it hasn't budged at all. So I think I'm just gonna admit defeat and put it back together, take it to a shop, because I just can't do it. It's sad. I hate saying that, but I mean, I nearly did it. It's just like if it wasn't seized, then it would have been done basically. But yeah. So I'm gonna start throwing all the bolts back. It's not even that many bolts, right? There's the axle bolt, 2 in the shock, and then 2 more underneath. So I'm gonna take it to the shop, see how much it costs. I mean, like, I gotta get it done. So I guess we'll cut back later.